Hi folks, Florida Man here, and what you're listening to now is another part of Talleyrand. What follows is Talleyrand, 1907, the French perspective. We see that there's a whole lot of red in the middle, so there's a lot of there's a lot of unhappiness happening. At the same time, I do see a successful move into Denmark.
Yeah, that is the one good spot. I'd say if you look at this board, what pops out at you the most here?
I think besides all the bright red in the middle, the fact that you got into Denmark and the fact that Italy moved west.
Yeah, I think Italy moving west is really actually the most important part of the moves here. Right, this is clearly Italy saying, "I don't trust France anymore. I'm just going all out against France." Right, he's too powerful. I'm going to attack him. Right, and that's clearly what all his moves represent. Right, he's doing our range balance in Western Med. He pulls over to NAF. He pulls over to Piedmont. He pulls over to Tice. All bad moves for me. To put me on the defensive. And he gave me false information on what the German moves were. Right, he made me think that Germany was definitely going to defend Kiel, I think. He promised to tap Bohemia for me, and I thought I was going to get Munich here. And I could have, if I had done an alternative move, I could have forced Kiel, right? So he fed me some false information, which I changed my moves based on the intel, because I still thought the Italian was working at this point. So that the Italian stab is also why we see so many red dots in Germany as well.
Yeah. And there is one other interesting thing I see before we go back to that, which is Russia moving Sweden to Baltic and Norway to Sweden.
Yes, that was something I negotiated with him. That was, you don't have a friend in Italy, you don't have a friend in Turkey, and you probably don't have a friend, and Germany's going to be dead soon, right? So if you want to stay in this game, you need a friend. Help. I'm not going to touch your centers. Help me carve up Germany, and get yourself into a better defensive posture. Which is, and I didn't say he needed to vacate Scandinavia, right? But he chose to. I think it was the point where he was just fed up with Italy at this point. Actually, is the player he most despised. And you'll notice the other interesting thing is the Russian army in Ukraine supporting Turkey into Romania, right? Which is the most surprising move, I would say. I don't know why he did that in terms of, at the very least bounce Turkey out of Sevastopol, right? I think he gives Turkey both Romania and Sevastopol, pretty much completely unnecessarily. But it's clear at this point that he really just hates the Italian, wants to make sure that no matter what, the Italian loses Romania, and that's sort of where these moves are motivated by.
Oh yeah, it's all spite there.
Yeah.
So you see Italy moving against you here. I want to ask, how surprised were you, and how worried were you? See that?
I was certainly surprised. I thought I thought we had a pretty good game plan of how we're going to, proceed to the end game. Told him you should be mopping up Turkey here, right? So I was surprised to see that. Obviously, if I expected that, I would have made slightly different moves. But I didn't think I wasn't especially worried. I mean, that I knew I had the right number of units to defend and the right builds to reinforce, right? So I wasn't as surprised as it might be, or I didn't feel danger there.
Which I think makes sense, because you have a couple fleets already positioned in the south, and you have a build which you can put in Marseille.
Yep, exactly. And that really is why I was not too worried about this, and why I didn't try to take a more defensive posture earlier. In that I knew if Italy moved against me, I have what I need to defend, right? And I have builds coming.
Yeah. So you get a build. Italy actually has a destroy, and Turkey has, Turkey has two builds, both of which are fleets. What do you think when you see that?
And I was certainly happy to see two fleets. That keeps him from being a major player in the north, right? It's going to make his assault into the north a little bit slower, and even more importantly, it keeps Italy off balance. Now, it's not the ideal location for the two builds, right? He's still Turkey's kind of playing his options here, right? He's saying, I'm going to do the two builds, but I'm still your friend, Italy. It's look, it's an anchor, right? So he's trying to play both sides here, which has really been the Turkish players' strategy the whole game, which is what he continued here.
Yeah, it seems like a very workable strategy for him right now.
Yep.
We see that Russia destroys the unit in Sweden, just further continuing the trust fall into your waiting arms, and showing the depth of Russian trust in French good intentions. Interestingly, we're going to see how things actually work out between you and Italy, and how things work out with Russia.
Yep.
Spring 1907. And Italy is naturally naturally continuing to try and attack you.
Yep, he's continuing on the assault, and I'm of course continuing to take German centers, and that the German centers are kind of there. That's the two most important moves that I look at here are the attempted convoy into Prussia. I think is really critical, and Germany and Russia retaking Sevastopol is also pretty critical. I think those are both. At this point, I was really talking to Russia a lot and saying, you can trust me. I'm going to pull Norwegian away to go deal with this Italian threat, and you just need to look at Turkey and Italy are working together, look at the way they're coordinating, and they're going to try to take all your centers. So you just need to trust me and let me help you defend. Right? And that's why I moved into Prussia. And I actually had originally asked him to convoy into Livonia, because I was afraid of exactly this, of the bounce there in Prussia. So that's, he didn't trust me for that for some reason, possibly for a good reason, possibly not, but it's not catastrophic in that he still, because he was able to retake Sevastopol, he can support Warsaw with Moscow, but it was a nice notice that my instincts were correct and that they would try to push into Prussia. So we had that bounce there.
Yeah. Interesting to me that Italy moves Tyrolia to Vienna. What do you think about that?
That was actually a very surprising move. I don't really know what he was thinking with that. Maybe something to get the German to trust him. Maybe Germany was feeling like, maybe Italy, you're going to take Munich. I don't really know why he did that, actually. It seems like he really gave up on his ability to not take Munich for himself, but help Germany defend Munich. That move basically guarantees that I can take Munich.
I was going to say, to me, the move out of Tyrolia is just like, I don't want to say anything bad, but I just think it's a bad move. It's giving up ground for no clear reason, unless he was. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only way it maybe makes sense is if he didn't trust the German, right? If he thought Germany was kind of just spazzing out at this point and might just try to take centers wherever he could, that Germany might try to take Vienna and give up on Munich or something, or use Berlin to take Munich to support Munich, and use Bohemia to try to take Vienna. Maybe he was thinking something along those lines, but I obviously don't know what diplomacy went into that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that is what happened. I think in any case it was. I don't think it was an optimal move. I don't think it's what I would have gone with, because the German player has been pretty steady. He's not been doing crazy things or surprising things to me, and certainly not biting the hand that feeds sort of maneuvers. And even if he did take it, it would be no great loss to Italy.
Yeah, Italy has plenty of centers. He can afford disbands if he needed to. I'm not sure what was involved there.
I kind of understand his defensiveness toward Turkey a little more, because Turkey has been moving is acting in a shadier way, shall we say?
Yeah. No, I was surprised to see. But I think Turkey is also acting suspicious towards Italy here too, right? With the move into EAS in case of a bounce there, presumably, right? Or in case of an Italian move there. So I think it's. Those two clearly have some trust issues, which I was fostering as much as I could and really counting on to put me in a position to dominate and solo this game.
Yeah, it's amazing how much there is in terms of trust issues here. And we see Italy makes a little bit of progress against you in the Mediterranean, but it's not very much.
It's more or less irrelevant progress, truth be told. I kind of anticipated or expected some version of those moves, but I was perfectly happy to see him. I was happy with this result, right? I can be in Spain, I'm not going to lose any centers, and I can force MAO in the coming turn, right?
Yeah.
And that's also really critical.
On the other hand, maybe Italy is making a smart play here by forcing you to commit almost all of your fleets to the south, because it does prevent you from... it means you really can't, even if you wanted to, make a big attack on Russia, which, at this point you're not trying to, but I'm sure he's concerned about you suddenly acquiring a bunch more centers.
He certainly could be. I would say my view is this is actually still tactically a mistake, more strategically a mistake, in that despite him forcing me to pull some of these fleets down, I can take Scandinavia whenever I want, right? I really only, Russia has completely evacuated Scandinavia, so I could take it with one fleet if I needed to, right? And I still have 2 northern fleets, right? And so certainly he's keeping me occupied, but not in any meaningful sense that impedes my path towards victory, in that, I still am absorbing centers, and whether I get centers 1 at a time or 3 at a time really doesn't matter at this point. And he's compromising any path towards his victory. He's essentially compromising this move, right?
Well,
he's losing.
Sorry, I was just going to say I question that a little bit. I don't think Italy has a path toward victory. I think Italy
doesn't have
towards stopping you, and if that's his only priority, then he's making, I think, a decent move by putting his units where they need to be.
I'd say he probably doesn't have a path towards a solo, right? I think he lost that, particularly when he moved out of Tyrolia, probably a few years earlier, actually, when he lost the momentum. But he still is losing. He's losing his path towards being part of a draw even here, right? Because the main thing that threatens his position in a draw is not me, right? He can deadlock me in the Med very easily, right? It only takes 2 or 3 fleets at most to deadlock me, and I'm not even that close to him there. His threat to a position in a draw is the fact that Turkey remains strong and thriving, right? And Turkey is the player who could push him out of a draw in the future if he wanted to. So if I were the Italian player, I would just say, you're not going to get Tunis to the French player, right? You're not going to get Tunis. I'm going to leave the fleets to defend there, but I would be committing way more against Turkey here and trying to take the Turk out.
I actually think that it's probably too late for him to take the Turk out.
It might be. It depends. It also certainly doesn't help him that he burned a bridge with Russia, right? That is also the major flaw.
I was going to say, if he made up with Russia, then I think it would be possible. But factoring that in, I think that his best strategy is, tell Turkey, I am holding a thermal detonator. If you come after me, I'm going to drop it, and we'll both blow up. And pour everything he can into fighting you.
And essentially stalemate me.
And what were you thinking was going to... I do think that vacating Tyrolia looks even more like a mistake, though, in that light. But what are you seeing likely to happen in the fall from this position?
I was planning to probably take... I was just take some more German centers, right? And then defend, of course, against... Really just play defense in the south against Italy. Get him to back off a little bit, maybe.
At this point,
and then...
I was just
get close to the line.
I think it's pretty clear you could, with your current arrangement of fleets and armies in the south, you can play defense against Italy literally forever, because Italy, you and Italy are in this situation where you're both actually quite well defended against an attack by the other.
Yeah, I mean, he has no path to take any of my centers in the south, right? So I'm not especially worried about that. It's really the only moves that are coming in the fall is really just trying to push further and faster into the German centers, right? And that's really the key.
The German perspective. I should probably ask you, how do you feel about the game? I know that,
I mean, it's basically curtains for me at this point. I sort of accepted that a couple turns ago, but I hoped that if Russia had helped me hold Denmark, maybe we could have pushed back against France, but they were mad that I made a couple jabs at them, and so that, or they thought that their best shot was allying with France, and so I really can't do a lot about it. I mean, I can maybe hang on in Munich for another year, but That's okay. That's how it goes. So Italy told France that I was going to move Munich to Kiel with support from Berlin and Denmark.
That's not too far from what you did.
That is not too far from what I did. So the only difference was then that instead of that is that I covered Kiel. That was the big thing. The big thing was to get me to try to keep Kiel. So this was all a plot to try to get me to keep Kiel, which worked, right? So Denmark was basically lost. We knew that.
Yeah. Without Russian help, certainly lost.
Certainly lost. And Russia, this was the move where Russia stabbed me that I was just talking about a minute ago, or 2 minutes ago, where Russia was meant to hold Denmark from Sweden, but decided they wanted to move to the Baltic instead. And so they did, and I lost my Danish territory because of their selfishness or whatever motivated them here.
What do you think it was? What do you think it was that motivated them?
It's a good question because, I mean, France is in a super strong position. France has a ton of fleets. I don't know, maybe Russia thinks that if they can work with France, they can weasel their way into the draw. But that's assuming that France isn't just going to get away with a solo once they eat up me. I don't know. That's the question, right? Can France solo?
Will France solo?
Will France solo? I mean, surely he'd like to. Because who doesn't want to? It's the whole point.
What? What was that, sorry?
That's the whole point.
Oh yeah, that's the point of the game.
The point of the game is to take everybody else out and eat them up. Yes. So either that, I mean, Russia and I have not had a good relationship since their first message to me, which basically threatened me if I didn't let them into Sweden. So maybe it all goes back to that. We'd sort of been working together at one point, but then I tried to stab them twice, and it almost worked once. So I don't know if I think it's probably a combination of things. It's usually not just one thing. It's a combination of them not liking me from the beginning or from me trying to stab them, and also realizing that France is powerful and maybe they can ally with France and last longer. On the contrary, the argument I made was that if they allied with me and Italy, we could push back together against France and actually have a shot. But they didn't like that.
That's kind of rough.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think what's interesting is to see what will happen between Italy and France. I mean, Italy and Turkey.
That is interesting. I agree.
What I'm hearing is that they're not really getting along super well, despite the fact that they orchestrated a stab together against Russia. I'm hearing this more from Italy. At least from his perspective, it sounds like Turkey isn't being the most collaborative ally in terms of wanting to work out a three-way.
Turkey's interesting.
Yeah, Turkey got unlucky in the beginning.
And he's gotten luckier as the game has gone on, though.
Indeed, right. I mean, that's the fun of being Turkey. Is just when you think it's over, it's not really over because it's hard. It's unless Italy really gets in there right from the beginning with Austria and/or Russia, and like takes your home centers, you have a shot at coming back.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Even if you don't have, you're sort of limited and you're sitting there for a while turtled up. Something happens and it's easy enough to break back into Russia. So, what is Turkey's up to 5 now? Not bad. 5 and counting.
Yeah, well, he got into Sevastopol in Romania. That's pretty
right. Right.
So that was the fall, and let's go to builds. You destroyed a fleet in Skagerrak.
Yeah, Italy wanted me to keep it and annoy Russia, but I was sort of like, I can't really do anything. I mean, maybe I could have, given the fact that they destroyed Sweden. But it just felt like if I wanted to live, my best shot was just to retain my armies and try to hold myself.
Yeah, maybe it could have been interesting if you kept Skagerrak, but I don't know how much good that would have done you.
I mean, I would have had to disband it this turn anyway, was sort of my thinking. It's like I knew I was going to have to disband continually.
Spring 1907. Let's discuss what happens here.
Yeah, so at this point, I'm saying to Italy, look, it's basically over for me. you've been a good friend. How can I help you? What can I do to tip the scales in your favor on my way out? So they suggested I go for Prussia, and maybe we could attack Warsaw and continue to make a dent against Russia, at least, since they did, in effect, stab me by not supporting Denmark, because that's kind of what was the complete undoing of my position.
Mm-hmm.
So France also had the idea of going to Prussia, apparently, and so that didn't happen. I don't know why Burgundy supported Munich, but that happened. And France took Kiel. Italy finally decided that they should go after France in the southern seas, which is a bit long overdue from my perspective, but better late than never, right?
So they say.
So they say. Turkey built 2 fleets, right? So like that bodes poorly for IT in general.
That'll enable him to take the Black Sea. You don't think that?
No, I mean that does seem like a worthwhile goal. But he lost Sevastopol anyway.
Huh?
You know what I mean?
What'd you say?
He lost Sevastopol anyway. So can he take it back? That's the question.
Yeah, I think it's
3-on-3.
You know,
Unless Budapest taps Ukraine.
Yeah, that unit that was in Budapest that's now in Galicia can help out.
But once you get the Black Sea, it's like, what do you do with those fleets? If not, take them down and annoy Italy, or help Italy. What's that?
I said that's a good point.
So in the short term, it's understandable, but in the long term, it's my understanding that IT requires one to build armies and one to build fleets, if it's at all to be successful.
I've never seen a successful Italian-Turkish alliance other than like what's going on now, which is them trying to stop.
Yes, I'm playing another game in which I'm Turkey, and I had a really good IT happening, and I'm about to stab Italy. So
that's what happens in every game that I've played.
Yeah.
In Turkey, and I have a good IT happening.
Yeah, it just becomes natural at a certain point.
I think it was always kind of natural in the geography of the two positions. And so that's why I don't think I've ever seen a successful IT, because Italy will inevitably get stabbed. And so any intelligent Italy will be looking out for that and will seek to nip that in the bud by going after Turkey early.
Yeah.
But, it's the late game, really. And now, they have to work together, or France might actually solo. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether he can sort of put up a line and get across it, or what'll happen.
Yeah, but what you're saying about their trust and teamwork being kind of iffy, I don't know, maybe we're going to have some problems there.
I mean, if I had to guess, I think France can do it. He's a savvy player, from what I've seen.
If I had to guess, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm betting on France for the win. There was an earlier point where I was thinking that Italy would solo or could solo, and that it was between him and France. And now Italy's obviously lost the chance to solo because this rebuilt Turkey is a big problem for him.
Right. But things fell apart between him and Russia, and so what choice did he have? But he did have the choice. I mean, he felt like Russia was stabbing him, maybe because Russia felt like he was. I don't know if it was sort of a mutual. It'll be interesting to watch back all of the interviews and see.
Yeah, I know what happened, I feel like, but
yeah,
we'll discuss that at the end, at the close of business, I think. The Italian perspective. Do you want to discuss where we left off in this game?
Yeah, so last time I talked to you, I said, you know what? I'm going to stab Turkey, and I'm going to work with Russia now. And at the very end of the video, I was like, oh, I just got a press from Turkey. Let me read this. And that's where we left off. So that press from Turkey convinced me to change my mind.
Oh, wow.
It was just enough to make me think, you know what? I'm going to trust these guys. Let's do it.
Okay.
And then at the same, like a minute later, Russia sent me a text saying, hey, let's not just bounce in Galicia. Let's leave it empty. And I was like, that sounds a little off. Why would they want to leave it empty now? When all we're going to do is bounce, and that would leave it empty. That seems like they're trying to make a play on me. So I decided to change my orders like in the last 15 minutes, really.
That's intense. makes me glad that this season didn't process early or anything. So, wow, you end up going pretty. Well, you end up still mostly going pretty hard against France, but you and Turkey clearly devastate Russia here. He had been hoping to get Romania back, and he loses both that and Sevastopol with fall orders.
Yeah, it was a pretty good hit. Honestly, it comes down to if Russia had supported Denmark, France would not have been able to move in, France would not have gotten a build, and I would have been in a position to actually do some damage against France. This entire game, from here on out, could have been different if Russia had just done what they said they were going to do and support Denmark.
Yeah, that's true as well.
And so Russia was really mad at me, and they copy-pasted our entire press and did a public press to everyone. Here's everything Italy has ever said about you, just to throw sand in my eyes. Just, I don't know. In my opinion, manipulation and deceit is just as important as the tactics. And if you can't handle that manipulation and deceit and lying, I don't think this game is for you. Because if you're going to take it all really personally and flip out like that and be childish, come on, man.
I honestly do think that was not the best reaction. I'd probably say the same thing when I talk to Russia. I mean, it wasn't against any rules, but I do think that it was not productive. And now, you and he probably weren't going to work together, but I can't imagine it's going to enhance the chances.
No, we can never work together with each other again. It was very childish. It was flipping the table because I'm not getting what I want. And France and Turkey are both smart people, and I think they both see okay, Russia's an erratic, childish player. We can't work with them long term.
Well, you know what I'd be thinking if I were France?
How do I use Russia?
Yes. If I were France, I'd be thinking Russia is really ticked off at Italy.
Yep.
How do I use that to help me get the solo? And we see here that Russia actually vacated Norway and Sweden. So do you think maybe Russia had an inkling that you were not going to follow through with your friendly words? And
I don't know.
He didn't think he'd hold on to Romania. He didn't think he'd keep your friendship. He didn't think you'd stay on his side.
And as I said, I was going to stay on their side up until the last, 20, 15 minutes when I changed my orders. And it was the two things. It was Turkey confirming that we're going to work together. And I was like, okay, he actually really wants us to work. And then it was Russia saying, no. How about nobody move into Galicia instead?
Yeah, that's pretty darn shady.
Yeah, and that just put me over the edge. And so I've foreseen twice now Russia's stabs, quote unquote, and I preempted them and stabbed them beforehand. So they got hit pretty good here. And this turn basically changed the game. Germany's out. There's no more point trying to get Germany into a three-way or get them to recover. So if we go to winter, so this is when France, Turkey, and I were all up late messaging each other, trying to figure out what happens next. And I think we all kind of came to the conclusion that we're going to three-way. It's going to be a three-way draw with the three of us. And now the question is, how do we get to that point? So none of us trust each other.
Nope.
France wanted me to withdraw. Turkey, I said, hey man, I really don't want you to build those two fleets because I know they're going to be used against me. But Turkey's like, well, I got to destroy that fleet in the Black Sea because Russia refuses to disband it. So Russia is giving me the middle finger and giving Turkey the middle finger. And at this point, really just wants to make sure France wins. So knowing that Russia's entire game plan now is how do I give the solo to France, we have to operate differently.
Interesting. How so? I mean, how do you think that things are going to be different?
Well, I have to find a way to strike the balance between forcing France into the stalemate line and not pissing France off so much that they will fight for years after at the stalemate line. And on the flip side with Turkey, I have to find a way to get ourselves into a mutually defensible position without allowing one of us to stab the other.
Interesting.
So, so I decided I was going to disband Vienna because that's not as necessary. And I knew France is going to build that fleet in Marseille. Like, that's what's going to happen. They have to do it because they have to do it for their own defense. So I have to walk that line between pushing France into a defensive position without making them overly upset.
Yeah. I mean, does it matter if France is upset?
It does, because I need France to like pick up 2 or 3 Russian territories, so that Russia has to disband. So therefore, we can get to the stalemate line before France does.
Do you need France to pick up one or 2 or 3 Russian centers, or is France just going to do that no matter what, and you're just going to try and take advantage of it? Because that's what I see.
So France is smart. France is a very good player, and they see that Russia just wants to make sure that France wins. And so France is going to be very slow to take those centers. They're going to get all their stuff in position, and then they're going to take everything at once. And that's what they're going to do.
If I were France, yeah, I'd probably, let me see, once he gets the German dots, that's what I'd be focused on if I were him, is getting the German dots, because he can win with just Russian centers if he can break through the German dots and get into Warsaw and, let me see, he needs, the Scandinavian centers, plus the English centers takes him to 6, home centers is 9, 10, 11 with Iberia, 12, 13.
You need Warsaw or Moscow.
Yeah, and that's not a tough sell, right? That's not a tough thing for him to achieve as long as he can keep Russia in the game until he gets there. So if I were him, I'd avoid attacking Scandinavia for now, like you suggested, and I would go through Germany and grab Warsaw. Or, even better, if he thinks Russia's capable of this, I'd have him attack Austria, or your holdings in Austria, and see if maybe we can get me into Vienna or Trieste or something.
Yeah, France has a few options, but all those options require getting along with Russia and not forcing another Russian disband.
Yeah, that's a good point. And all of them, I think, require him going through Germany.
Yep.
Germany has to go. If he can't destroy Germany, then he's stalled out.
So therefore, I need to prop up Germany as long as possible until we can get Turkey to Moscow and me to Warsaw.
Yeah. Good
So
point.
if we take a look at spring.
Spring. Wow, a lot's happening here.
So on the east, I'm still not totally trusting Turkey. So I did the self-bounce in Greece. And I moved Tyre to Vienna because I didn't know if Turkey was going to come at me or if I would need the extra support to get Galatia. I frankly didn't think I was going to get Galatia. I thought Russia was going to be more spiteful against me than spiteful against Turkey. So that was surprising.
It looks like Russia's still sort of trying to defend himself rather than just moving in ways that are only spiteful and nothing else. Yeah.
And so I told Germany, and so Germany reached out and was like, hey, I'm dead. Do you just want me to do any mercenary moves for you? I was like, yes, please. How about you go to Prussia, and then we'll try and support you into Warsaw in the fall. So that Berlin to Prussia was not intended to bounce them, but it worked.
That was perfect for you, really.
That was really good luck.
I think that was necessary, honestly.
Yeah. Because if France had gotten into Prussia, they would have been able to just defend Warsaw to the last minute and then taken it and gotten their solo.
Yeah.
Which they still might try to do again.
I guess in retrospect, France probably made a mistake by not convoying that to Livonia.
Yeah, they were trying to make the quick play.
Yeah.
And this is perfect evidence that Russia's only intention is to make sure France solos.
Well,
they don't care about winning anymore.
Well, Russia could be thinking that the combination of you and Turkey is kind of a threat to France in its own way. And maybe if he gets a French unit or two in Prussia and or Livonia, he can sort of get France supporting him to hold in those spaces. Maybe he figures there's a way he can finagle his way into this draw.
It's a long shot.
Well, it's definitely a long shot. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. Yeah. So I pushed France back, and I wanted to bounce them out of Marseille. And not surprising, Russia got Sevastopol. I was surprised that Russia favored hitting the Turks over hitting me, because Russia really, really hates me.
Russia might not have very many friendly feelings towards Turkey either, but I mean, again, I think this move shows a preoccupation with actual survival. He should try to recover his homeland if he can and keep it intact.
Yeah, I'm not sure. At this point of the game, I've been pushing Turkey and France to just admit the three-way. And in private chat, France is like, yeah, I'll three-way. And in private chat, Turkey's like, I'll three-way, but I want to wait a couple more turns and I want to see France turn on Russia. And so I couldn't get them to the table. And Turkey...
It sounds like the resistance is from Turkey.
What's that?
As in, the way you put it, it sounds like the resistance is from Turkey, which is...
Yeah, the resistance is from Turkey. It really was. And so, and when they pulled that fleet to east, they explained, like, honestly, it's just, I thought you were going to stab me. And Turkey and I don't necessarily trust each other, but we also know that we're each other's only hope.
Hopefully.
Because if we go to war with each other, France wins.
Yep.
And so in discussing the fall moves, Turkey and I had some real back and forth, because I'm asking for something to show on the board that Turkey is serious about this three-way. They were so reticent to just start a three-way chat, and made me really worried that they had no intention to actually try and three-way, but they were going to try and do something stupid and go for a solo. Or Turkey is going to try and do something in which they cooperate with Russia and France to knock me out, and then figure it out from there. I mean...
The plan is that we're going to jump off of a cliff and build our wings on the way down.
Yeah. And I'm really trying to avoid an irrational move. And so I asked for something in return. And they told me they're moving Khan to Aegean. And I was like, look, I can't have you do that, because then you are 2 fleets to my 1, and I need to use my other 3 fleets against France. And I don't want to see that happening. And so we had some back and forth, and I was like, look, you could not move Khan to Aegean. You could withdraw Bulgaria to Constantinople. You could pull east to Smyrna. You could do at least a 3-way chat and be sincere about it. And he wasn't going for any of it. And then he caved and was like, okay, I'll do a 3-way chat. And so we did the 3-way chat, and France immediately came back saying, nope, not interested. And so then I explained, like, look, if you're going to put Khan to Aegean, that means that I have to withdraw armies to put on a defensive line against you. And I don't want to do that, because I need my armies on a defensive line against France when France ends up taking Germany. And Turkey is trying to, like, stroke my ego and say, like, hey, you're a really good player. I finally have the luxury to be defensive with you, and so that's why I'm getting into defenses. And so I proposed another option. I'm just giving Turkey options here, something on the board to show that they're sincere about this. I said, okay, how about you pull east to Smyrna, then I'll do Ion to Greece, so that way there's no fleets in Ion. That's no longer threatening to you. And then I'll do Serbia and Vienna bouncing in Budapest, so that Vienna is still the same proximity to Tyre, and I can get it back over if needs be.
Ooh, interesting.
And I'll still use Galatia to cut Ukrainian support so we can take back Sevastopol.
This is interesting.
So Turkey agreed to that. They said they'd pull east back to Smyrna. And they're going to go all in and take back Sevastopol, which fortunately will destroy that fleet. Now Russia's going to have to rebuild, and that rebuild is going to be in St. Pete.
Probably an army.
Yeah, probably an army. But at this point, we'll have Turkish armies in Sevastopol, and I will have advanced up that then Sevastopol can tap Moscow, and Romania can tap Ukraine, and then I can take Warsaw.
You sound like you're pretty nervous, though, about Turkey.
Turkey's a good player. They're good. I did not give them enough credit early in the game. I am worried about Turkey working something out with France and Russia. So we'll see. So in our three-way, I kind of explained, I don't think any of us can solo, because the moment France gets past the stalemate line, Turkey and I will be united no matter what, and they won't be able to finish it. I can't solo, there's too much ground. Turkey can't solo, there's too much ground. And then I explained there's no two-way on the table as well. No one will two-way with Russia because Russia has proven to be very erratic and irrational.
Russia's not capable of being a two-way.
And they're not even in the military position.
That's what I meant when I said capable. I didn't mean...
Yeah. They're not capable. They're nowhere in the position to make any demands. Germany is eliminated. So I explained a France-Italy two-way will not work because I would be taking the brunt of the fighting against Turkey and spending half of my units defending against a potential stab from France, and I would never trust them enough that they wouldn't just try and dot me and take one more. A Italy-Turkey two-way won't work because by the time we get to St. Pete, we maybe will get into Scandinavia, but we're never going to break the line of Munich and Berlin once he's got his armies there. It'll just be too late. And then a Turkey-France probably won't work as a two-way. And I said, like, if Turkey takes one of my supply centers, I'm just going to move everything out and say, France, come take Tunis. I'm done.
So what do you think are the odds that Turkey's actually going to stab you?
Maybe 20%. Low, but high enough that I'm still worried about it.
Well, it's good that they're low, though. That is low. Diplomacy. Yeah.
So I need to prop up Germany and Munich as long as I can so that we can hopefully make progress into Russia. And so you see here in my fleets, so France is a smart player. I'm 90% sure Spain and South Coast are just going to support Leon. And now is going to come to Mao with Portugal's support. So there's no point in me bouncing them in Mao anymore. So I'm going to move my fleets to get into a position so that I can eliminate Leon next year. That's the plan there. And I got a hunch that France might do a self-bounce, Gascony and Burgundy bouncing in Mar, and then they build a new fleet in Mar. And so I'm doing this tricky move where Piedmont supports Gascony in, which would override the bounce.
That's an interesting set of moves there. I think that's pretty clever.
So we'll see if it works. I mean, I want a French army in Marseille because then you can't build a new fleet there.
That's perfectly fair to me. I get that. Yeah, I think that's probably a wise priority to have because, as I see it, if France gets a new fleet in the Med, he outnumbers you at that point in fleets.
So he won't be able to turn me back, but the defensive line will not be in my favor.
I think that he might gradually be able to chip away at your defensive line.
If he gets the fleet in Marseille and I get no more builds, yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And especially because you're moving, you felt you had to move Ionian away to Greece, which I understand. I think that, Turkey is, the way you're discussing your dialogue sounds worrying. I think Turkey is kind of making it necessary. But yeah, especially because that extra fleet is just not going to be useful for a while.
I want to use it against France, I really do, but Turkey is just not letting me do it.
Yeah, Turkey might be being too clever by half here by not trying to help you with a stalemate line.
Yeah, and that's what I'm afraid of. That's why there's still a chance that Turkey's doing something irrational.
Telling you he's going to move into the Aegean Sea. That is a bold thing to say to Italy in this situation.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Turkey to back off because I want to use that extra fleet against France. I really do, but Turkey won't let me do it.
Well, I appreciate you telling me about the current state of the game. This is exciting. What are you expecting for the fall?
I asked Germany to move Berlin to Prussia again, just to bounce them one more time. Defending Munich. I hope my little clever plot with Marseille and supporting Gascony works. Turkey is worried that Russia is going to do Sevastopol to Romania with Ukraine support. We'll see.
Well,
I don't think we're going to get France to hit Russia yet. They just won't.
I mean, I think there's every possibility looking at this map.
I mean, it's so easy. They just take 2 supply centers, then Russia disbands 1 because the fleet in Sevastopol will be destroyed.
What I was going to say is I think it's very entirely possible looking at this map. If Russia's really trying to give it to France, then France could maybe even still use the Russian units. He could get support into Berlin. That's what I would be trying to make happen, because if Russia tried to convoy a French unit into his homeland basically just now.
Yeah.
So why not use that to support Kiel into Berlin, and at the same time you attack Munich, but mostly you're just like, you'll have Kiel and Berlin now. So
yeah,
Germany's basically done, and the French advance can proceed unimpeded over land.
pretty much. And it's a scary situation. France definitely has a shot at a solo.
I think so. I think if I were France, I'd be excited. Haven't spoken to France yet about this season, but I think if I were France, I'd be trying to think of ideas to make it more likely to happen. Because I'm sure that with this map looking the way it does, that those 3-power draw conversations are not attractive to him right now.
No.
What was weird to me was how they didn't seem attractive to Turkey either. But
well, it's really frustrating that Turkey will not let me pull that extra fleet or that extra army over against France. They just won't let me do it.
Turkey says, "Don't worry, I just want to come around and give your centers a hug while you're away."
And I told them, like, you take a single one of my supply centers, I'm done. I'm throwing the game to France. Because I won't be able to hold on against you, but I can make you lose.
Yeah, you just need to give one center to France, really. Thank you for continuing to play such a thoughtful game and give such insightful commentary for the viewers.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. For the longest time, I was betting on you to solo.
No.
I mean, I knew that between who has to get the solo win, it was either going to be you or France or no one. But
interesting.
But for a long time, even though you kept denying that you were thinking about it, really, I was betting that you would probably figure out some way to get there. But it's tough. You have a tough situation right now.
Yeah, honestly, my relationship with Russia fell apart when Russia refused to do a fleet in St. Pete and therefore refused to move on France.
Yeah.
And at that point, my chance for it was gone.
Yeah, in retrospect, that was definitely a turning point.
I think there were 3 major turning points in the game. One, spring 1901, when Austria decides to move a fleet into Venice. That was the worst mistake of the game because that destroyed the Central Triple and basically undermined all confidence in Austria. Second major mistake was Germany attacking Russia. Without, at the same time, France moved on Germany. That Germany made that attack without being totally confident in their French neighbors. And then number 3, Russia refusing to build a fleet in St. Pete.
Well, I definitely agree on at least 2 of those turning points. The Turkish perspective. When last we left off, you were making some plans with Italy, and
yes,
also with Austria, or not Austria, Russia.
Yes. So I promised Italy that I would be moving the Aegean Sea to Constantinople. I promised Russia that I would build a fleet in Constantinople and Smyrna if they let me into Sevastopol, and I would let them back in the next turn. And I essentially broke both of those promises, but both of them gave me what I wanted. It seems like actually I sent a last-minute message to Italy about kind of confirming the orders that we had agreed upon, because I didn't have a super high confidence that they were actually going to go through with those orders. And I think sometimes that last minute message can make people kind of change their mind, either because they feel bad that they've been lying about something, or because they decide, oh, I'm thinking between two options, and now that this person has asked to confirm, they're much more interested in doing this line. So maybe that's, that's kind of the tipping point for them. And that
you mentioned it, I think that's a powerful persuasion technique, is being the last person to speak to somebody.
Yeah, well, and also just the last minute before orders, sometimes people will not spend the time to think through what's going on and just kind of make a gut decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, from both perspectives, it's definitely, it's a tactic that doesn't always work, and I think a tactic that's better used infrequently, but it can be powerful when used correctly. And luckily here, it seems to actually have persuaded Italy. Afterwards, they actually told me that that was the deciding factor, that they ended up changing their orders because of that last minute message. So, that was really helpful. But yeah, so I ended up basically not following through with either of those and getting away with it, which is kind of one of the powers of Turkey, is that you don't necessarily need to be particularly a good ally to either of your neighbors. As long as they're not directly focusing all of their energy on attacking you, you can get away with doing a lot of stuff that people might not be super happy with. So I ended up building in Constantinople and Ankara. At this point, Russia made some childish decisions relating to Italy, and it was very clear that Russia was not a player I could trust.
So just to say, Russia forwarded the entire thread of his conversations with Italy to everyone.
Yes, it was certainly interesting to read those press from my perspective, and I'll get into that more in kind of an after-game summary.
And so the forwarding of messages is just a nail in the coffin for Russia in your mind. It's kind of convincing you that you should not try to work with Russia in future.
Well, not just that. I think Russia made a number of mistakes in their moves, especially relating to the northern area of the map, where they basically have provided France with free rein to do whatever they want. It's an interesting decision, and it certainly hasn't gone badly for Russia yet, but I think it will very soon. But from my perspective, that makes Russia not at all an ally. When I was negotiating the move to Sevastopol, there were two important moves that I also needed Russia to make that otherwise the move to Sevastopol didn't even make sense for Russia to allow me to do, which were to move Moscow to St. Petersburg and use Sweden to support German fleet in Denmark to hold, because I assumed that France was going to be convoying their army into Denmark, as did happen. I told Russia to do both of these things.
We did not do either of those things.
And they didn't do either of them, which, from my perspective, it upsets the board balance greatly in favor of France and increases the variance that could allow France to maybe rush over the stalemate line to Warsaw or Moscow.
Don't you think that might have been Russia's intention?
Might have been, but the point is that either way, Russia's basically saying, I'm going to die no matter what, right? And a defeatist player like that, both, and they also were defeatist in the sense of, they told me specifically, I don't care what happens in this game, all I want is getting revenge on Italy at this point. And a player with that single-minded goal is not one that I want to work with. I want to work with a person who's thinking rationally and making moves rationally. And Russia just doesn't seem to be a player that's making rational moves at this point.
I can understand that. I certainly
And so I'd much rather work with the logical but potentially threatening Italy than with the illogical but weaker Russia. Yeah, another strategic consideration there is that I want to make it into a draw because I can't solo. And I don't think that there's any real conceivable situation where I could eliminate Italy without France getting a solo. And so therefore, Italy and I have to draw together. And obviously, the only person we really draw with is France to get to a three-way draw. I think at this point, Italy and I have both accepted that. France is maybe on the fence, but I think they'll, if anything, be forced to accept it by Italy and I as we block the stalemate line.
I think that's probably the only way France would agree to a three-power draw, is if he was forced to.
Quite possibly. I think it's the only result France deserves at this point, especially given that they've talked now about how they don't want to eliminate Russia for I don't know what reason. That there were a number of turns where they could have gotten 2 or 3 supply centers there in the north, and maybe that could have pushed them over the edge. In addition, they lost Western Mediterranean. I don't think that was necessary to happen. Italy supported into Western Mediterranean.
That is true.
And France. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that France has not made the kind of aggressive moves that would be necessary to actually succeed at a solo here. They've demonstrated this time and time again throughout the game that they aren't an aggressive player, and they're very reluctant to make aggressive moves. Even against Germany, there was a turn where they supported their armies rather than supporting into Ruhr.
It's interesting. I wonder. I mean, I think that France is trying to play this sort of delicately, and I'm not sure that that's a wrong play.
Well, France is certainly making it into a draw, but
I don't know if
it's
France
not hard to make it into a draw.
I don't think France is trying to do that, and I think you might be underselling what France is doing here.
I think France may think this is fancy play, but I think this is a phrase borrowed from another game I play. I feel like this is from Magic the Gathering, but fancy play syndrome, where you have some clever ideas, and because you feel clever using those ideas, you make that play rather than the actually correct play, which is maybe more straightforward, because you want to feel clever, and that actually makes you lose win percentage. And I feel like that's a lot of what France is doing here, if not just actual mistakes at this point. There's no reason for France to play this slow right now. Italy and I have clearly started working together. That's not going to change. We both recognize the strategic implications of the situation and both realize that we need to stop the solo, and not only that, but are both going to be working together towards a draw, and so have almost complete trust at this point. So we are actively working to eliminate Russia and working together. Russia's definitely going to be eliminated soon, and France's only chance at a solo here is to get Warsaw or Moscow. So really what they should be doing is rushing to get there.
Well, he almost convoyed into Prussia last season.
Yeah, and that's certainly worrying. And I'm sure that was France's intention. Maybe I can get Warsaw this way. But
I would just note, it's not that France's only chance of solo is to get Warsaw or Moscow. It's that if he gets Warsaw or Moscow, he will solo with certainty.
Germany still may have a shot at either protecting or capturing Munich for themselves. In addition, even if they get Warsaw, if they get it before they get both Munich and Berlin, and Italy can take Warsaw,
that's true. That's
then
the point.
It's not guaranteed.
Take it.
And in addition, it is the only way for them to solo because they are not getting Tunis at this point.
Probably.
There's absolutely no way. Unless Italy makes some really bad decisions, and I have strong faith in the Italian player that they're not going to make those decisions. I think the Italian player is definitely the best player on this board, excluding myself from the running because it's difficult to place myself in a ranking.
Humility is hard for diplomacy players, so it's good for you that you exclude yourself.
Well, it's just if I were making the rankings just on my own personality, I might say that I'm the best player. But there's no, I have no data to support that conclusion.
As I said, humility is difficult for diplomacy players. It's good that you don't rank yourself, that you think about the game in terms of the other players.
Either way, Italy has consistently made good moves, even if those moves are bothersome to me. I think they made some smart choices, actually keeping me around rather than working with Russia. I think they judged correctly that Russia was not the best ally, which also, some of that is from the Italian and Russian press, but also some of that is just from Italy sort of leaking Russian orders to me, even though I kind of anticipated those orders as well. Nevertheless, having the confirmation from Italy and Italy not really supporting Russia in a number of cases, I think those are all smart decisions for their kind of board balance. Anyways, Italy has done a really great job this game. I think they're very deserving of getting into this draw. I think from the French perspective, it was foolish to not move into the Western Mediterranean. From the Italian perspective, it was great they could convince France that was foolish and not move there themselves until very late. they built up a fleet such that they could move into the Western Mediterranean really quickly and apply a lot of pressure, but they didn't need to go through with that threat until it was absolutely necessary, and could, in the meantime, keep me extraordinarily on my toes.
All right. Well, what do you think is coming this season?
So what I've negotiated with Italy. So the thing is, I built the 2 fleets in order to support myself into the Black Sea, which is something that, again, I that's just breaking the promise that I made to Russia. But Russia also kind of broke the promise that they made to me. So I don't have any sort of bad feelings against the Russian player at this point, because they're clearly just going to be emotional about this game and not actually thinking through things logically. So I'm supporting myself in the Black Sea, which is yet another way to ensure my survival. It makes it a lot harder for Italy to break down my defenses, even if Italy were trying to do so. And that also allows me to leave a fleet in Constantinople to support into the Aegean Sea. And in addition, I'm just going to retake Sevastopol from Russia, with Italy breaking support from Ukraine.
So I'm sorry, I don't have your full moves in front of me. Are you saying you're going to go for the Aegean Sea?
Yes, I'm moving Constantinople to Aegean Sea. My intent was, so I moved to Eastern Mediterranean last turn from Aegean Sea. That was not just from the perspective of, I want to move into the Aegean Sea. I half expected Italy to try to go for the Eastern Mediterranean on the expectation that I would remain in the Aegean Sea, because there was some possibility that France and Italy say, let's put aside our differences. We know that we're both drawing here. Let's go for a 2-way draw. France has some incentive to do that, because if they tried a 2-way draw with Italy, they could maybe get over the line to Solo. And Italy has an incentive to do that, because they then get a 2-way draw rather than a 3-way draw. So I could foresee a scenario where Italy decides to move to Eastern Mediterranean and kind of start moving their fleets back in that direction. I thought it was unlikely, but nevertheless, better to just do all of the due diligence necessary to keep myself in this draw at this point. I got the lucky couple breaks I needed. I'm on 6 centers. It's a reasonably certain conclusion at this point, but why not make sure that it is? And so it's the same reason why I'm moving the fleet to the Aegean Sea, so that I kind of have 2 fleets in the Mediterranean to prevent Italy from going through with any sort of funny business. Clearly that didn't happen in the spring.
So if you have 2 fleets in the Med and one of them's in the Aegean, what are those fleets going to do? Are they going to go forward and try?
They're just going to sit there.
They're just going to sit there.
Yeah, that's it. All it is telling Italy, look, if I wanted, and actually I negotiated with Italy here. They're a bit worried about the 2 fleets. I don't know if they necessarily need to be.
That's what I would expect.
Usually, in a game of diplomacy, Turkey builds 2 fleets and puts them in Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean very early on. And normally, Italy just has to deal with that.
Usually that's something Turkey does to attack Italy.
Quite possibly. But Turkey also does that a lot for defense, because it's a really strong defensive position just having 2 fleets. Most countries can't defend a lot of their territory with only 2 fleets.
That is true.
Right? Turkey is just a very strong defensive country. So why not play up those strengths? So Italy's not happy about that. So I kind of told Italy, I'll move Eastern Mediterranean back to Smyrna, which I've now set in my orders. So I'm moving to Aegean and moving Eastern Mediterranean to Smyrna. If Italy wants to bounce the Aegean Sea move or move to Eastern Mediterranean, that's totally fine, because at this point I have 2 fleets, and that makes me relatively safe. And anyways, I don't think Italy's going to do that at this point. But at least having the threat of force is helpful to keep someone as an ally.
That is true.
And also, kind of on a silly and perhaps childish note, I want a fleet in the Aegean Sea, because I think before this game is over, I might try to take back Greece, just as a, haha, I let you into Greece all the way back at the beginning of this game, and now I'm going to take it for myself before we draw.
You see.
Just to kind of have that as the final game thing. It's really silly and childish, and I don't know if I'll end up deciding to do that. There's a part of me that kind of wants to end on an equal center count or higher than Italy, just out of I don't know, spite perhaps. But again, it's from my perspective, a draw is a draw is a draw. I'm happy to get into a draw on 7 centers as much as I would be as France to get into a draw on 17 centers, because, honestly, if I were France, I would be considering getting into a draw on 17 centers a failure more than anything.
I agree. This isn't tournament play, so the number of centers doesn't matter.
But then again, there is a part of me that kind of wants to take Greece just because why not? We'll see if I end up deciding to do that or not.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah. So that's kind of my prediction. I feel like it seems to me at this point that Italy and France aren't going to be able to really decide anything. France is too scared of Italy. Italy is too scared of France, as Italy should be. And Italy is doing a great job defending. But the other reason why I wanted to move 2 fleets into the area is that I did want to make Italy a bit scared. I wanted them to make sure to leave not just a fleet in the Ionian, but also a fleet in Tunis or the Tyrrhenian Sea, in order to potentially support that fleet if necessary. Because since France is not doing a great job defending, they let Italy into the Western Mediterranean. I don't want Italy getting into Marseille or anywhere else. It wouldn't be the end of the world, because I still don't think Italy can solo, but I would rather Italy only provide the necessary defense against France and not a defense that is so good that it's actually an offensive.
I understand. You don't want him to gain any ground.
Yeah, well, I don't want him to gain any ground in France. Italy's gonna get Warsaw. I'll help Italy get Warsaw. I don't have any problem with that. So,
but you want to keep the war it's a purely defensive war, essentially.
Yes.
So you're going to potentially intimidate.
I don't want there to be a case. I don't want there to be a situation where France isn't threatening to solo anymore. Because at this point, the best way to get into a draw is to make sure that both Italy and I are working to stop a solo rather than just keep in a large France, right?
Interesting point. Well, I don't think you're ever going to get to a situation where France isn't threatening a solo, so I think you will succeed in that objective.
Well, France isn't very threatening, to be fair, but they certainly are fairly large. I don't know. I'm more and more critical of the French player as this game has gone on, but maybe we just have personal differences in this regard.
I was going to say,
France is certainly a nice player. France is certainly a nice player and has done a great job getting allies in this game. Whereas, as we can see, the allies I have are, if anything, begrudging rather than really fully committed. So maybe that's a problem with my play that is a mistake as well. I'll certainly analyze that after the game. But nevertheless, I think there were a couple decisive moments where France could have been a bit more aggressive and gotten to a place where they might have been much more likely to get a solo.
The way I see it, France currently controls directly his own centers, which I guess is probably going to include Kiel since he's occupying Kiel now. So France personally is at 12, and France indirectly controls the Russian centers. So as far as I'm concerned, France is basically at 17.
Of course. France is essentially at 17 already. The problem is France is very far away from 18 at this point.
I think France just needs to unite his forces, basically, because the Russian forces are going to do what they can for France, it seems like, and France is the only one, I guess, because you and Italy are both attacking Russia, so France is the only one Russia might still like and want to win. So I think if France can get through Germany, France wins. That's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, I think that Italy has enough armies in the area that worst case scenario, we can always support Warsaw to hold. We can always force a 4-way draw that involves Russia. Even an unwilling Russia, we can just support them to hold and say, if you're not trying to win here and you're going to move those units so that it cuts the support, then, that's just terrible. But it seems likely that Russia wouldn't do that ridiculous of a play. I'll be getting Sevastopol back this turn. I can support Moscow, so France has no way to get that one. Italy is in Galicia, in Silesia. That's enough to support Warsaw. Even if Russia loses Ukraine, we can move an army there. I think we have enough force in this area of the map that France has really no way to get through. Usually, the thing is that France trying to play the German strategy of getting Warsaw or Moscow. Why that's typically the German strategy is because Germany usually picks up one of those centers in the middle of the game, or even potentially the early game, depending on the diplomatic situation, and then only later gets all of the West. And then since they just have that center and keep it, that's how they get to 18, whereas France usually is only able to get it at the very end of the game like this, and that's very unlikely. Whereas France picking up Tunis early in the game can happen and can be reasonable. Sometimes Italy doesn't even grab Tunis because they're more focused on Greece and Turkey.
That's true.
A savvy France can manipulate situations such that they can pick up Tunis. I've never been that player, but that, from what I've read, that's the case, and it seems perfectly logical to me. France maybe even sometimes could pick up Venice, but the Warsaw plan, at least in my mind, is really a last-ditch attempt that is unlikely to succeed.
I guess we will see. Do you have anything else you wanted to share with our viewers about your thoughts on this coming fall and what's going to happen, or on the different players or anything?
It sucks for Germany that they're getting eliminated, but I think there were some moves Germany could have made a long time ago that maybe would have prevented that. But I can go into this in an after-game summary. Again, sucks for Russia that they are likely going to get eliminated, but again, I think there are a lot of mistakes there. Great job, Italy, for being a good player. Great job, France, for making some allies.
You're not going to give France a whole lot of credit, are you? Well,
France is easily the strongest country. France is easily the strongest country in the game anyways, and usually the only reason why the game is balanced is because Italy, Germany, and England all know that France is such a strong country and know that if they want to attack, they should coordinate such an attack. And the wonderful thing about diplomacy is that they can coordinate an attack on France. And France also then can convince one or two of them to not do that attack, because then they can stab their allies, which it does a wonderful job balancing the board. But when Italy doesn't put any pressure on France, and France can get an ally between England and Germany, it is relatively easy to get very large as France.
That's a fair point. I think you're overstating the strength of France a little bit. Like, statistically, France, I don't think France wins that much more often than other countries. But
in gunboat diplomacy, France wins a vast majority more games than any other country. I know that's not the same situation in regular diplomacy. However, France still has a demonstrably greater amount of raw power than any other country on the board in terms of both defense and offense.
I sort of agree.
I'm reluctant to give French players much credit in general. Unless if a French player solos, they deserve the credit. But if they get into a draw, that's not hard.
That's true. I guess what we'll think of the French depends on whether or not they'll get to sit low, right?
Yeah, we shall see.
The Russian perspective.
So, this is spring 1907. I try to retake Sevastopol. Russia tells me he'll let me retake it only with a fleet and moves accordingly. And I guess that was true, that I wouldn't have been able to retake it. I don't know.
Because he cut the support for your fleet that's in the Black Sea.
Right, but I could have I don't know. Couldn't I have? No, yeah, that's right. Because I would have had to have power of 3, and he had support of 2.
It's funny he's using the phrase "he'll let you retake it," Turkey, because I mean, as Russia, you have more force right here on this particular point. He can't stop you from retaking it. It's very thoughtful of him to say he'll let you do it.
He's a nice guy.
What can I say?
I've always admired the Turks and this particular player.
I admire.
I have nothing but good things to say about him.
I certainly admire his guts.
His forthrightness. Let's put it in the positive. Yeah.
I was going to put it in the positive.
You were. I was going to put it in even more positive.
Yes.
But here's another thing. France told me that I could convoy Denmark to Livonia. First he suggested Prussia, and then he suggested Livonia. I said, Livonia makes me kind of nervous. What about just Prussia? He said, okay, but, I'm a little surprised, but are you going to support it in, or maybe you'll want to do something else with that unit? And I said, anyway, I didn't end up supporting it in, and I didn't. And I tried to switch to Livonia after he provided some reassurances, but then it was too late because he never got back to me. So I just kept it as Prussia. And he did not get into Prussia, but he did bounce Berlin out of there, so that was good.
Yeah, that might have saved him from losing Warsaw right there.
Italy and Turkey are moving completely in sync, it would seem.
That's a little worrying, I suppose, for you.
They're not attacking each other, and they don't seem to be worried about leaving themselves vulnerable to each other. So, yeah, Italy's getting into Galicia here.
Any other insight you want to give me about the diplomacy going on here? Or
I like that France moved away from the Norwegian Sea. In fact, his moves this turn made me feel pretty comfortable with the alliance. He had a unit next to Sweden and a unit next to Norway, and now he's moved away from Norway, and so he can only take one support center, one supply center away from me in this position. So that that's I think less incentive to stab me.
Yeah, it's a much better situation for you, I think. Hope you've liked this video, and if so, I hope you'll like and subscribe and check out more of my stuff. Until next time, Florida Man out.